Witam serdecznie na drugim panelu dzisiejszego dnia, który jest niejako kontynuacją poprzedniego. Zresztą tak to wszystko planowaliśmy, żeby łączyło się to w logiczną całość i żebyście mogli wynieść cały pakiet wiedzy i doświadczenia z tej konferencji. Mam nadzieję, że tak będzie. Jeśli ktoś jeszcze chce do nas dojść, to jest ten moment. Jeszcze przez 1,5 godziny będzie ten moment. Można dołączyć w każdym momencie. Ja się nazywam Wojciech, jestem z Fundacji Krakowska Scena Muzyczna. Myślę, że większość z Was już to wie, ponieważ przed chwilą też tu byłem. Natomiast moi goście będą opowiadać dzisiaj o tym następnym kroku. Jeśli już uzgodniliśmy, nie wiem czy tak było, ale może przekonaliśmy Was, że współpraca jest sensowna i ma czasami jakiś cel. Nasi goście dzisiaj opowiedzą o tym, jak współpracę skonkretyzować i zrobić z niej coś namacalnego. Let me switch to English because we also have English-speaking audience actually and English-speaking guests. Let us start. Paweł Szamburski, Lado ABC. Piotr, radio, Komuna, Muzyczna, Music Commune. Beaumont-Nesbitt, is it correct? Yeah, more or less. This is international representative of International Music Managers Forum. Bogusław Pluta, representative of ZPAV, Związek Producentów Audio-Wideo. Wojciech Konikiewicz, reprezentant Związku Zawodowego Muzyków. Musicians, how do you translate it? Musicians label union? Musicians union, okay. I would like to start with a question, a really simple one, as a continuation of the previous panel, and a really quick one. Do you think that cooperation is at all necessary in the music business? Please take microphones and... Is collaboration necessary in music business?
Yes.
What do you think?
Collaboration between people.
In a very general sense. Collaboration or cooperation?
Is it necessary?
Yeah.
For the musical business.
For the music?
For the music it's not necessary. For the musical business I think it is.
Piotr?
Yeah, I guess that's why I'm here, to find new cooperation possibilities. And yeah, this is the most important part of doing music, because music is cooperation somehow, right? You're giving some sounds to the audience, and they're giving you back some energy at this very basic level. And if you want to do something, there's a huge bunch of people working on concert, on gigs, on events, festivals, and so on. So we have to cooperate, and this is obvious. But as we are talking here about cooperation, I think it's the biggest necessity. And this is what I always tell people, that we have to cooperate, have to know each other, have to know what we do, have to learn from each other. Yeah, so but I don't want to make this panel in 5 minutes, so maybe I will just pass the mic further.
Jake, why do you think cooperation is not necessary?
Well, I think it just disproved that you could argue from very alternative, experimental, edgy artists that it's important that they're off in isolation doing their own thing. But he's exactly right that artists at any level are working with a bunch of other people, be it the studio, the other influences, the artists in their record collection, the person who taught them to play their instrument, or the music that they've digested. It's very much a connected, communicative, creative thing, and we built a business on top of that to service the creative side. So everything is led by the creative side. So when you come from a thing that's about sharing and openness and communication, that's what we're selling. The job of the business is to be able to facilitate that. And it's really important that when you're helping an artist, as a publisher, a collective management organisation, a label, a manager, whoever, you're helping the artist, you're an intermediary who helps them and the audience to connect, that you find as many ways as possible to connect. So it's really sort of broad, fluffy comments, but you're talking about trying to connect emotions between a creator and a consumer. And how you do that will be, it's about stages, be they digital platforms like SoundCloud, or a stage at the theatre, or even a platform at a station with a bus stop. It's constantly that communication. So the cooperation, collaboration thing is infused into everything we do. So the more we understand it, and the more we focus on it, the more powerful we can enable the artist to be communicating with their audience.
Wojtek, can I switch to you, because I have a plan. And you represent musicians union, so it's like a one big corporation, isn't it? It's like you're representing a group of many musicians. In what way do you cooperate with them? In what way do you represent them? Do you think that the union is necessary at all? For what reasons?
Well, you know, the situation is not typical, because the Polish Musicians Union was established, I think, as one of the very first social institutions of Polish Republic before the Second World War, and after that it was cancelled by communists in 1949, being in a stage of huge development. In fact, all the music market was controlled by Musicians Union, and you couldn't literally play music for money if you were not in the Musicians Union. The story ended in 1949, and communists, they established kind of bizarre hybrid called the Union of Workers of Art and Culture, which was a strange gathering of actors, musicians, technicians, whoever working in artistic business. And of course it was useless. It was kind of facade rather than something real. And when we got back the independence in 1989, all the musicians in Poland, they had kind of illusion that free market will solve all the problems. So there was no urgent need to establish or re-establish Musicians Union. Everybody was counting on this magic hand of free market, which was, of course, a big mistake, because from many points of view, the Musicians Union is necessary. And to make a long story short, some 4 years ago, with a group of very well-known Polish musicians, producers, we decided to start a fight for re-establishing the Musicians Union, which took about 3 years. Finally, some 1 year and 4 months ago, we succeeded. We got the official decision, and we are registered, and now we are in a phase of kind of starting it all again. So it's difficult to say what is it like, especially for we don't have any funds so far. So the group of musicians which I represent is working constantly just with no fees, with no money, as opposed to we spend our private money to make the things going on. And what is optimistic, we are I think some 1 or 2 months before we will start accepting people into this musicians union, because we need some structures. We need physical place, we need a postal address, things like these. And we found some money, for our money, to invest, or not just spend, better say, for that. And the story is opening now. But why it is so important? It is very much crucial from our point of view, because Polish musicians are not in a very comfortable position, which means we don't have any real impact on politicians, on law. We also, sorry to say that, we have very small impact on medias, especially state medias. For example, in Polish radio, Channel 3, in April, we had only 27.75% of Polish music presented. We had 40% of Polish music presented in Channel 1. So this is disaster. We are minority in public media, which are called
in our own country.
Yeah, which are called Polish radio. And in fact, it's not Polish radio, it is English-American radio with some addition of Polish music.
With Polish funding. Bogusław, because you give just to explain, because maybe not everybody caught this, Wojciech represents musicians union. Bogusław represents a union of producers, record producers. Jake, it's not a union, it's an association, is it?
It's an association, but it's not just like trade union or chamber of commerce. We are a collecting society, so we also perform some business activity, which is getting money from radios, restaurants, bars, shops, and so on, and distributing this money to record labels.
I was actually planning to ask you a question. The first question about the very short history of the association, and then the main thing that made it possible. Like, what was the thing that connected a group of producers to form an association?
Well, I would return to your first question. Do we need collaboration with music business? Yes, we do, and I would say that without collaboration, the music business in Poland in current form couldn't exist at all. Because we started as association in 1991, when in Poland there was no copyright law, there was no record labels rights, there was no artist rights as well, only authors rights. Artists they didn't have rights at all. So we started. It was like 15 or 20 people. They gathered and they decided to form an association to fight for creating a copyright law in Poland, which will recognize also neighborhood rights, so rights of music producer and artist. And without this joint activity of record labels, we will probably have some copyright sooner or later, but it wouldn't be in the form we have at the moment. So in music business, the legal framework is really important. Without legal framework, we wouldn't be able to collect a lot of money that we need for our rights. And so it means lobbying, and lobbying in fact is also always a joint activity of the group of interests. In that case, we work for the labels.
So the main reason for forming an association was to
in 1981, yes,
was able to lobby and to influence the law.
But the second is that at the moment we have like over 30,000 customers in Poland, which are bars, shops, restaurants, hairdressers, and so on. I guess that no record label will be able to get money from 30,000 points. It's impossible to do. This job can be done only jointly. So collaboration is absolutely necessary, and we collect over 10 million euros yearly. So I will have a presentation on it later in the afternoon. But it's for Polish record labels. Sometimes it's majority of yearly benefit, the money that we collect for them. So it's really very, very, very important. I would say one thing I would make a picture that Wojciech presented even more pessimistic, because when you talk that the Polish radio Trójka is playing 27% of Polish music, or Jedynka is playing 40% of Polish music, it's during 24 hours. If you take into account the impact, so how many people were listening to this music, it's much worse. I mean, because they are playing this music during the nighttime and between 5 and 6.
Okay, can we pass it on? So you can of course refer to what you guys said, but also please explain the reason why IMMF was formed.
IMMF, International Music Managers Forum, was an event just like this in Manchester in the north of England. It was a bunch of managers socialising, catching up, and they did what they always do. They sat around the table and someone saying, hey, we just signed a deal with that company and we managed to get this from them. And somebody else going, whoa, that's really good. And somebody else going, nah, you can get better. And so it was just a network of artist representatives swapping information casually, socially, then saying, hey, we should do this once a month formally. And then they approached a music industry accountant who wanted to have relationships with all the managers. And the accountant said, you can use our boardroom meeting once a month. And it just sort of snowballed from there. But the initial core of the idea is artist business representatives sharing knowledge and information. And so you have to overcome that initial hurdle that you're in competition with each other. So it's very hard for two managers to sit down and share, what are you doing? You know, like, oh, we did this. It's really difficult initially when you're competing with someone to share. But the example we just heard about is that there's other people out there that are bigger than you. So to collect money from radio stations, to force radio stations to pay you money as a record company, means you need to get the government on board. The radio stations, we've seen this hot stuff with Trump and Clinton and the media, radio stations are very powerful in dealing with government. So to form collective action from the little creative industries and go up against media is really difficult. And so that's sort of the other end from sitting over at the table having a chat. But then ultimately what the managers have found is that across the artist business, the artist cares that the record labels organise with the performers and then go and take on government and start to put those policies forward. This point about the low representation, around 30% of radio and Polish repertoire, you can only address that collectively because you're going up against big powers against media. Currently in Brussels, a proposal is going through to do with streaming, and it possibly would have an unintended consequence that the licensing would work in such a way that, say, Spotify would be very much more controlled by the major record labels than it is currently. So you've potentially got a worse situation than is happening at the radio, the small representation of Polish repertoire on national radio, and even smaller representation potentially of Polish repertoire on streaming services. So,
which you normally would think that in the level, I mean, the chances are equal. The chances aren't equal.
So the only way that you need to come together as labels, musicians, managers, the whole community needs to come together and discuss these things, because none of us individually have the answer.
Piotr, the original idea that kind of connected us for the first time was that instead of DIY, do it yourself, it was DIT, do it together. What's the idea behind that? Why would you want to do things together instead of doing it alone?
You know, it's quite similar, except from that we're not about gathering money, we're working on the basic level, and I was just organizing concerts, and I realized it's kind of strange and useless, and at least very, very hard to call a guy in a city you've never been to, or you've been to only for holidays, but you don't know nothing about the city, and you haven't seen this guy in your life, to talk about setting a gig in this venue you haven't been to before, to play with a local band that you probably never heard about, for an audience that you don't really know. You don't know their behavior, you don't know if Friday is the best night, or maybe...
Yeah, it actually sounds like a fucking stupid idea to do it at all, but lots of bands actually do it daily.
Yeah, and I just realized, you know, I just counted my time, my emails, my phone calls, and it was, come on, it's somehow useless. I don't know those people, and they don't know me. And even though, okay, so this Bartek from, let's say, Gdańsk or whatever, is just calling a stranger. So I just thought to ask myself the question, but come on, there are other crazy guys in other cities, because I'm based in Warsaw, still based, not for so long time in the future, but anyway. And there are some other crazy guys like Tomek from Warsaw here, sitting on the audience, operating in Krakow, or you, that's why I call you. And I just said, come on guys, let's do something together, because you've got your contacts, your networks, and I've got mine, and let's sit down together at the table, and let's talk what we're doing, and because you've done this thing in that place, and I couldn't, why? And let's use your contacts, so let's connect all those DIY strategies and behavior into something bigger called DIY together, and let's cooperate, and let's bring some cool bands that cannot go on their own to this. It's in the underground even, so not maybe a business, but anything on tour, and it's quite hard for them. Come on, you all know about it. It's quite hard to break this wall, and let's help cool bands tour easily, and just do your own concerts in your own city, and let your guys do it in their own cities. So to minimize the costs, minimize the effort, and to broaden the network much more easily. So this was the initial idea of creating Komuna Muzyczna.
Paweł, the same question for you. Nothing original, but it's very important to hear that. What was the aim of creating Lado ABC?
Lado ABC is a music company, music label based in Warsaw. We established like 15 years ago or so. And basically I wanted to release an album, and Bartek never wanted to release an album, and we didn't want to look for a publisher. So we decided to publish ourselves and make a label. This is the reason why we did it. Not to depend on someone's schedule or market vision or whatever. So we established Lado ABC record label, and a few other friends were involved in the meeting, like Maciej Moretti and Marcin Lenarczyk. So basically few friends, musicians came together, and we decided to open a label and for releasing our own stuff, not to look for, can I publish this? Basically, so we end up with spending our own money for this at the beginning. Then we released, after 2 years, we released some bands that were kind of money giving, like commercial.
Profitable.
Profitable, yes. So, like Paul Caro, for example, we released their first album, and they were selling books, so we get money, and they, of course, share this money with us, because we are kind of DIY, downtown, underground shit. So yeah, we had money for releasing other weird, fucked up music. So that didn't get money, and now we came back after 15 years to the root of the idea. So basically, I released my CD or vinyl on my own. I paid for it, but then again, I have the right for it, and I can sell it on the concerts, whatever. So still, we have only one label on our releases on regulator. So no pattern. That's nothing. There is no independent. There is no dependency on other things. So yeah, but of course there are some bad sides of this situation, that we are not professional businessmen or whatever, just musicians. So we are our own managers all the time. There is one manager that is taking care of few titles from the over 80 titles. He took on Masecki, Mitchell, 3-4 names, but the rest they're doing the work on their own, and some better, some different.
Okay, so it kind of resembles what Piotr does with the guys from all around Poland. There's like lots of DIY guys or entities, whatever you call them, and they're doing one thing under one label. Is that the situation?
No, in our situation it was a bunch of friends, musicians in Warsaw. So what connects us is a kind of same taste in music. Yeah? And that's all. So of course we were like increasing the range. You know, a lot of musicians came to Warsaw and they wanted to listen to an album in Lado ABC because Lado ABC is so cool and blah, blah. And of course we listened to I basically it's like 3 or 4 people, me, Macho and Manetka from Muzyczna, and we listen to the record, and if we love it, like it, it's cool, we can release it. But then again, someone who releases the album has to know that basically we can give him a label, but nothing is professional, so he has to work on it, you know. And if he's cool with it, like we are releasing now Kukusa, very young jazz musicians from Warsaw, and we know that they're very good for us, and we are good for them because they know they have to work and promote themselves and stuff, and not expecting from us that we are going to do it, because we are not doing it. We have no office, we have no workers, nothing. We can help them kind of.
Like in a marketing way, giving your own name to sign.
Yeah, this is all, you know, and without doing basically nothing beside music, we managed after 15 years to get in contact with a lot of beautiful people, like festival organizers, managers, or critics. And they write about us, they talk about us, they invite the bands for the festivals, and in fact it's a kind of a net. I call it second culture net. It's not a commercial way, it's the net of people thinking the same way about culture, music and stuff, you know. And we know a few people in Krakowie, a few people in Poland, in Gdańsk, in Berlin, or in other cities that think in the same way. So, and and it works.
Did you have because since you had a lot of bands, a lot of artists under the label, did you ever work with them using the potential? Because you say that each band has to do some work. Have you worked together on a single project, like using the potential of, for example, one guy does booking, the other guy does PR, the third guy does marketing, whatever. Have you used your artists in this way?
Kind of, but it's always totally chaotic, and you know, Maggio Moretti is, I think he's just the brain, because he's a like kind of idealist, communist kind of thinking guy, and recently he said, everyone said, oh my god, fuck, I'm doing it again, like I'm doing the net, the website, the new website, because I'm doing it alone, putting all the, you know, content into it, to make it right, and nobody's helping me. The guys who are listening to CDs for years, won't help me, and everyone's busy, have their families, children, and I don't have time, so we managed to schedule a meeting. Oh, it's cool, after 2 months, I sat on the table and said the same thing for 5 years we were talking about it, like, let's work on it, okay, you can do this, you can do this, and then it's like, we are losing everything, but it's still going on, and it still works in a way. So, basically, when the nuclear cell as a band is working good, it gives profit, like, for the Lado ABC label, but imagine, like, if we could have, like, 3 professional, you know, one PR, one management, and one booking agent, whatever, like 3-person doing.
Why don't you do it?
We don't have money for it. Like we have to, like, because there is the money. There's no money like for Lado is money. It's the money from this band. It's this band's money. So of course there is a share in Lado, but we don't have enough money to hire a person like full time to do the work. So we are doing the work. So it's just shit.
I don't know what to say. Very good recommendation.
The most commercial release last year was Zbigniew Wodecki and Mitch and Mitch, before he's dead. And yeah, Mitch and Mitch, they managed to get some money from it, but basically we put a lot of money into a new house, a new venue, our venue in Lado in Warsaw. We have a small house in the Yazlów area, which is very beautiful green area in Warsaw, and we are doing our shit there, you know.
So you have it's a great it was kind of the same thing with both Musicians Union and with ZPAV, in the sense that or at least Wojciech said that you didn't have any money, you don't have an office, you don't have money to pay to the people. How did you deal with that?
Oh, well, we are very much focused, and you know, our determination is high, so our spirit is high, so we don't give up. Especially for, you know, the group of musicians and artists who established this Musicians Union again, is, I would say, they are big names, more or less. So they can afford this, and this is typical, you know, social work, and this is, you know, without any fees, and we don't count on any money at the moment. Positive side is that our group on Facebook is about 15,000 of people, and there are more and more waiting. Everybody's waiting just, you know, for us to give us the sign, you know, where can we sign in, and, you know, I guess we can count on about 20, 50,000 of people in this union. So it's, I think it's quite a huge market or a huge group which needs kind of organization. But I would like to stress some other thing, because as a musician, producer, composer, I've been on the market for some 40 years, and I could, within my timeline, I could observe the changes in music business. For example, when I was recording in the early 80s with groups like, you know, let's say Citizen GC or The Battle Gets or Klaus Mitford or Lech Janerka and others, we were selling about 200,000 of copies of LPs, and if there was any chance to release more, they they would have done this, but no, this was communism, they had their own limitations and so on. Nowadays, the situation is rather bizarre, because when I see the numbers, when people get so-called golden record or golden CD for 15,000 copies sold, I guess. So it's peanuts. It doesn't cover expenses, promotion, whatever. It's useless. It's monkey business. So what to do in this situation? First thing that comes to my mind is that the situation needs kind of reorientation of musicians and managers and everybody who's in music business, because numbers become smaller. Music comes back to the clubs. You know, I remember the epoch when we were playing, you know, in big venues for 9,000 of people, 10,000, whatever, huge festivals. It's not that easy at the moment. In most cases, music comes back to clubs, small venues, and I think it's good for music because it's more natural, you know. I think, you know, the situation like it was in Led Zeppelin times when they could afford, you know, jumbo jet or whatever, you know, with their logo painted on, you know, it's no more, and I think it wouldn't repeat. I was talking with people from England because I've been on that market, I think, since 1986 or so. Mostly in jazz music area, but not only. I did some cooperation with Asian Dub Foundation and people from this kind of styles. And what I hear from the people, and I mean those people who are very much experienced, like Chris Stalevich, a journalist from England, he says, you know, the story has changed. You know, we had plenty of bands making money off of playing music, and nowadays I can hardly name 20. And the rest of them, they say that they earn the money from playing music, but that's not true. They get the money somewhere else. They give lessons, they do things just to survive. So the numbers are smaller, and in this situation, the general conclusion is that, you know, it is like with ants, you know. If you have plenty of ants, the single ant is meaningless, but if you have, let's say, thousands of ants united, they can build some bigger structure, and they can rule this structure, they can organize, and they can control this piece of cake, which is, you know, music industry. And the cake becomes smaller, and there's still more and more ants. So the problem is for these ants not to fight with one another, but to cooperate, to survive. And there's no other way, literally no other way. You know, within my long-lasting career, where I recorded over 100 CDs LPs altogether and did thousands of concerts here and there, my conclusion is that I was observing those people who were trying to go this way. Okay, I will be a self-made man. You know, I will do everything myself. I will release a record. I will be a manager. I will sell these records. I will do this, that. It doesn't work. These people, in most cases, they all end up, you know, with spending 90% of their time on, you know, running from point to point and trying desperately to sell this or that, or to organize a gig for small money, and it's useless. And in fact, thanks to internet and these modern medias, there's a big chance for musicians to organize and to create their own platforms. Let's say kind of even parallel world. I would welcome a situation where simply, you know, those majors who, saying rudely, who fucked up the musical business in Poland, when they collapse. And I would love to see people like my colleague, you know, going up with his business and finding his own place to live. But, you know, the problem is so far that these majors and those like Nation and these people, they are very aggressive.
And they have lots of money.
They have lots of money and they want to control. They want to control everything. I know this, you know, this is not from scratch, you know. I know very well the people who run big music clubs in Warsaw, like Progressia and others, where there's a venue for 3,000 of people, so it's not a joke. No, and what I hear from them is that they are permanently being undermined by this or that moves, by these companies who want to take over or they want to suggest this or that. So it's not easy, but on the other hand, I think the main feature of music, which is mostly, I think it's a core of it all, is kind of independence and kind of intelligent action. And this is the time for kind of intelligent action, and for musicians, you know, there is no place now for people like, you know, having ideas and waiting for miracle, for something that will happen. Nothing will happen. As somebody said, ironically, probably we have about 10 Jesuses on earth, but nobody knows them and nobody will find them at all. So that's it.
And maybe we will find them with social media now. But a fun fact, I read it somewhere, that the total mass of ants in the world is bigger than the total mass of mammals. This is crazy. Seriously. I'm not sure if it's true, but I read it somewhere. Bogusław.
Well, I would like to add something. First of all, coming to your question, how it started and how was finances and so on. Well, you may like majors or not, but our activity and our lobbying for the copyright law wouldn't be possible without financing, and this financing came from the big companies that invested in the Polish market. We got, at the beginning, we got big support of IFPI, which is the International Federation of Phonographic Industry. So they were paying money, and results of that investment is profitable not only for majors but for locals as well. Regarding the Polish market, it's not that bad that it's shrinking, it's growing. We are, I think, one of very few markets in the world where physical sales last year was still growing. We sold more.
Almost like Japan.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, nowhere in Europe physical sales is growing. In Poland it was growing last year, and the total music market is growing by 6% yearly or even more. Digital share is this year, I think it will be about 35%, so it's also more than that. And if you look at companies, Poland enjoys pretty strong independent market as well. Independent labels share in sales last year was about 40%, which is, I think, the highest. So we of course we have these majors. We have all three majors in Poland, and they get all 60% of cake. But their share is shrinking year by year, and the independent market and the independent sector is really, really strong. So I wouldn't be so pessimistic about that. And also, I think that in digital age, it's so easy to start if you want. It doesn't need a lot of investment to issue your first recordings. So I think that now we have time which is quite good for starting business activities.
Jake, you mentioned that managers are quite freelancers. They didn't like the idea of working together at first. Who is leading the whole association? Is it an association?
So there's groups of, just going back onto that, if the majors are at roughly 60% of the market, the independents are at 40%. What we used to mean 20 years ago by the independents was formal independent record labels. What nobody's looking at is within that 40%, what fraction of that is self-releasing artists without a label, using all these distribution platforms. So managers are just there to work with the artist. So obviously the manager negotiates a fee payment from the artist. But essentially what we're talking about is the artist's business. So around the world we increasingly have artists at our table. It's not just managers working with a major record label. And so we're in 50 countries having informal conversations in some. In India, it's a WhatsApp group because it's such a huge and such big distances, Delhi to Mumbai, etc. In Australia, it's very formal to have an office. It varies per country, but it's generally people in the middle tier driving the organisation. So the bigger, more established artists and managers will lend their support and endorsement. And then the smaller beginner ones are really after access to information. So it's become very much a middle class of the artist management business. And that's the area that's feeling the pinch at the moment. The superstars are still able to, through whatever means, like a Taylor Swift or an Ed Sheeran, to get the really big money off of the brand deals, not through the traditional forms of artist income. It's the middle class that are income that shrunk, and that's where a lot of the discussions.
Piotr, because you left Komuna Muzyczna, you founded it, you talked into all the guys that are unified or whatever, gathered in a group, and then you left it.
Collective, yeah.
Why is it so? Why did you leave?
Yeah, it's kind of sad actually out loud. I got bored with music, so I just couldn't sell the product I'm not into. But right now I think I'm gonna get back on different roles, I guess. So this was quite personal, but I like it, so I responded. So this is the answer actually. And it was quite hard for some time to do anything actually. And with this kind of collective, and we are, as my colleagues here all together are pushing someone, for example, government, media, or majors, or whatever. We were just pushing. We had to push ourselves to push venues, managers, and guys, and try to make it work. So I guess we were in the same situation, probably, except we didn't have Lado, so this is, your biggest advantage in this state. So yeah,
to do cool shit.
Yeah, to do cool shit. This is the point, and the only point. And and as in life, as Paweł said as well, all the cool guys usually have too much to do. So this is the internal problem of having this collective closing together, working closely, because everyone has his own gigs, his own life, because we are not in this state. None of us lives from music totally. We have to go to work, and it's more like hobby. DIY, come on, you know the trick. So not enough time, not enough power, not enough money, no money at all. So this is the main problem with time issue, and it was the main problem. But I guess I'm gonna call you in next month.
I'm not gonna reply.
But I will just call you.
I'm quitting it.
I'm just gonna keep.
I'll call you back in 5 years or something.
Tomek, is Tomek there somewhere? Okay. Not you, I know, I've got your number. I know what you're related, but I meant Tomek then from...
Right, okay.
So I got his number already.
Okay, he might answer. But the question is, because because we share this experience that it's actually I tried to discourage you from forming this collective where we talk for a fresh lot. I said no problem, call me anytime, I will discourage you more. And it's for me personally, it's very hard to push, like you said, have an idea. I very much admire Wojtek because that's what he said. They're very determined to see some changes, and and I've been resigned when I'm trying to push and I don't see anybody coming with me, or so I thought that might be the reason for you to leave. Was it anything like that?
I will explain it to you later if you
Okay, later in the evening. Oh, okay.
Yeah, something like that.
Because how do you find motivation for that, Paweł? How you said that Macio Moretti is the one who's pushing the things.
Oh yeah, motivation.
Yeah.
It's I'm a musician basically. We are all musicians, so the motivation comes from music and our. You know, I'm kind of optimistic thinking person, and I think it's for us it's good that in a way it's like so poor and weak kind of, because we have to work and you know we don't have money, so we have to work on your career more hard and you know releasing all these CDs and doing the rehearsals and working on the music and then kind of working on selling the music. But not, we are not really working on selling the music. We are basically working on our music, and then we release it, and then we sell it to a few people, and maybe they will write something about it, they will not, who knows, but it's working, you know. It's working. I live from music, you know. But of course,
Being a musician, not
being a musician.
Record label.
No, record label is a kind of
cool shit.
No, cool shit. This is the record label. The record label is like to have a physical, nice looking, beautiful looking. We release beautiful release, and when we are still like kids, you know, we are going with much of this GM Records press and releases. And you look at it and you're fascinated with this, news here. So it's like still like kids basically. And then I have it in my pocket and I can keep it. So this is it. This is for this, to give someone this, not to sell. So basically this is it. And but the music works like. Of course, we have to do. I'm doing a bunch of things. You know, I compose for the theater shows, for the theater plays. I compose for music for films. I perform and manage different bands, and doing a lot of things, putting my music into a different disciplines of art, and that's why I can live from music. I know musicians that have a second job, like Macio. He is a graphic designer. So
I noticed that it very often goes together. Like musician.
There is a festival. All musicians are graphic designers in Warsaw. So and in our association, because we have also cultural association combined with the label, and the culture association is this what non-profit. So we can't earn money.
Excellent. Sure.
I would like to briefly point another side of this cooperation. Why is it necessary, and why is it the future of music industry or musicians, managers, whoever? So far we have talked about kind of relation between music or music industry and musicians, so-called insiders, and the outside world, which means our fans or those who buy records, listen to the music, come for the concert or so. But there's another side, another party in the game, and these parties, politicians and lawmakers. And this is the point, because they don't care about you if you are single. They don't react. Short example, some 6 years ago, the representative of one of the music organizations, society of so-called musicians of entertainment industry, whatever it means, he had an appointment from one of the ministers, and he came up to his secretary, and she asked, please sit down, wait a while, and Mr. Minister is busy at the moment, and so on. And then he heard the voice through the loudspeaker from his room, like, who's next? And she said, no, there's a guy from this society of entertainment, musicians, whatever. Please ask him, how many members do they have? And she asked, please tell me, how many members do you have? He said, 5,000. Oh, sorry, so I don't have time. And this is authentic.
Yeah, it's very real.
It's real. I know it from a very good friend of mine. So what's the story? When you are single, when you try to be a self-made man, it works so and so in some fields, but up from some extent, you can't make it go. You have to be united, you have to have a structure, and you have to demand, you have to fight. One more example. You know, we have a law in Poland which charges every CDR, tape, or whatever, you know, because this is kind of potential loss for the artist. Okay, so there's a tax from, let's say, CDRs, things like these, tapes,
cameras, smartphones, I think.
No,
not smartphones.
The point is that you have these smartphones, you have these iPads, and other new tools, and believe me or not, we are probably the last country in Europe where the lobby of producers so far prevents, you know, changes in law. And what is the loss? Daily loss of money by artists in Poland is over 1 million zlotys. Because
I'd like to have my 1 billion loss at some point.
You know, it's real, you know. And what I know, in the Ministry of Culture, there is the update for this law, for this particular act, and because of some mysterious reasons, it's not implemented so far. So you may only suppose how strong is this lobby of producers, and how much effort we do need to overcome this and to fight this up and finally to make these things work.
Are you talking about record producers?
I mean about producers of smartphones, smartphones, iPads, whatever. This new media.
So
I got you wrong. I thought you were talking about music.
It's about the blank tape players. It's that way in English. And what Wojciech says is it's a process which already took 6 years to update the list of devices that are covered with blank tape players, and the level of income that we have in Poland is several times lower than in Hungary or Czech Republic, or even in Lithuania, which is 10 times smaller than Poland. So this is a very simple thing to do for the Minister of Culture. He has just published a list of carriers which are covered with letters. And for mysterious, it's not mysterious reason. They just don't publish it. Because of the lobby of Samsung, LG, and other companies that have to pay, Apple and so on, those who will have to pay that. So I hope that finally we will get something, but if we are not united, we won't get anything. So acting jointly in case of law, but also in case of getting money from more powerful players like radios or TV. Without unification, without acting jointly, we won't get anything.
It's a very important thing to understand this clash of interests. Like there's a huge lobby, manufacturers lobby, which is against our interests as musicians or producers or music industry. I mean, it is against. It's not. But it is naturally against because they fight for their.
Don't want to spend money.
Of course. I've got one more question for you, Piotr, because I've got this impression of the DIY scene. Actually, it's also a question for you, Paweł, because I get this impression of DIY or underground or second, what you call second market, second culture. Okay, and that you guys don't really want to go into like your kids forever, which is cute. I mean, it's not only cute; it's very inspiring because that's what, for me personally, music is about. To feel this kind of excitement that only a kid can feel. It very much resonates with me. But I kind of get an impression that you don't want to make another step. Don't want to form something real from it. Like you want to keep it DIY. You don't really want to make any money on it. You don't really.
I can give you one example which is very fresh in our environment. We manage. There is a girl who is writing applications for grants from the city, and she loves our society and our work. So she decided to help us, and she wrote an application for the grant for the Lado for 3 years, and they gave us the money. And like the problems started immediately, because there is a lot of money, and we have to spend it. Like, how? So basically, and there is a big responsibility because it's like a lot of money to spend, and you do it right, and someone has to. And she has a lot of work now, so she said, "Okay, I made it, so." Get on with it, it's cool, we have money. And we said, oh my God. So this is like too much money in our, because I'm talking about very subjective, my point of view from my background, and this is, when it's simple, like considering my colleagues and artists who I work with, when it's very simple, I have the CD, I released it, I go on the tour, I go to festivals, I work, I earn some money, I do a theater play, I sign the agreement, everything's like simple, It works perfectly. When there is a kind of a professional, situation where the money is involved, you have to hire a person, you have to like think in a business way, and you are starting to being a part of the first cycle, which is very often very very bad. I mean, in an ethical way, and in a capitalistic way, and in a taste way, and in very many ways, I hate it. Because they think only about how we become. But the fact, it doesn't mean, they don't think about music, about the chords, about the harmony, about the beauty, but they think about money, earning money.
Don't you think there's
this is shit, so we are afraid of it. Maybe on purpose we don't like to go there. And we are cool in our second culture cycle where we are at.
Cool. Piotr, what's your point of view on that?
It's hard to say anything after Paweł. But it's not about being working on low profile or whatever, staying in the underground. And I'm always, maybe not always, but really often, I'm really angry with my friends who say we don't want to have any money from our music, and this is pure shit for me. Actually, I argue with them heavily, but it's, as Paweł said, not about the money at all, and it's about giving people joy and doing cool shit, actually, and this is all about it. And I'm a utopist, so because idealism wasn't working YouTube isn't working as well, but it's working a little bit more than idealism. And I would like to make this stop hammer time, because we were talking about mainly pushing, and I agree that it's necessary to make it bigger in this case, because I represent in this panel the lowest, the most basic level of let's say music business, such as organizing small concerts in small venues and doing it totally locally. And I just believe strongly that if you'll have, sorry for this, you us or whatever, but if you'll have bigger cake, then maybe some crumbs will go to our level too, I hope, and fingers crossed for that. But I guess we were talking about, again, and maybe this is the part of my utopia in my head, I guess we're talking about the outcome somehow, and it's about, okay, we need more, but what about, not even giving more, but what about the basic level and encouraging more people to this mad circle we're into? Because we're talking about, let's gather musicians together, let's gather managers together, let's maybe not fight, but push media, government, majors, and so on and so on. And I'm always, and this is as well one of the most important things why I started Komuna Muzyczna. I wanted to educate people, and I wanted to show them that, of course, we're talking about huge artists, even if they are independent, but still, this is something beyond our imagination. I guess I'm looking at you, but you're not looking at me. That doesn't matter. Okay, yeah, thanks. That's something. And I'm just looking for this reason why it's happening this way, and I don't believe it's only that law, that government, people who don't care, and all those brands and companies mentioned before. But I guess we're just really screwing up with this basic level, guys. And I would like to address to you as well. What are you doing actually for bringing new people to, let's say, business? I mean, the audience, the future possible managers, or just influencers? Because this is as much, this is important as well, to bring new people, educate them, and encourage them to buy physical copies, to buy music legally, to go to concerts in the first way, to maybe even play music, because this is quite low in our country too, as I see it. I'm not sure if you all will agree with us, with me, but this is the thing, and this is the thing I wanted to address in this panel. And actually, this is the main purpose for me that I came to visit you and to talk to you guys.
Well, I would say that the main goal for me to be here and to talk is to tell people about our activity, to say that it's open for everybody. I have no my partner here with jacket, but I wanted to check if Paweł is already getting money from us or not. If you do not get any money, please, I will be happy to discuss, because we have money for you.
So they don't want your money.
No, you know what we did? You're not from Sieć.
It's different. It's almost
yeah, but we exclude ours from Sieć protection because someone laughed because we have to pay the tax rights for releasing this. Yeah, there is a pay.
Oh, like so you don't really have to do that. I mean, you can find ways around it.
There is a way to exclude the physical CD from protection from Sieć, because for us as a totally independent self blah 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 label, it's worth for me. I have my own.
I respect that.
Well, but the right protection, I know I signed some agreement years ago in SAP.
Yes, but it's
but I don't
artist
know.
rights that we must.
Performance
rights, but we must even don't need an agreement.
No,
we already have money, and we pay money now to just people under company security. and our members are 10% of them. Most of the money we pay so much is
it's actually the same thing with Zapis. Like they collect money for all of us, but only some.
I mean, we are much more open and we completely equal between everybody. Is it major or Polish indie or foreign indie or foreign association? The level of openness is absolutely equal for everybody.
Okay.
Coming back to Piotr's question, what we do, we already do educational stuff for companies.
Hello. They are actually supporting us financially.
Yes, we do. And I will have a panel later on a music export project. We'll also run a big educational project especially for small labels and for authors, for artists, to educate them how to be able to export something. Because at the moment we did some research and it appeared that the lack of education is the biggest problem of our market.
Cool, I didn't do the research, but I knew that from the starters. I will. Jake, yeah, you were trying to say something.
It's just interesting that at the point where you're becoming a record label, so Sieć is representing the author, the person who wrote the song, which is you. Sieć is coming to all the record companies, including your record company, and saying, we represent the authors for this money. And then understandably, you as a small business, and as the author, you're like, hey, why should I pay you, the record company?
For releasing your own album.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting thing that then comes into the governance thing, that the problems often with the collectivism, these groups coming together, is how they're run. So there is a problem where the author is charged by the organisation that represents the author for him releasing his own music. That's a problem. There's problems of governance and transparency. But they shouldn't necessarily be the reason for opposing coming together and organising and collecting. They need to be armed out, but they shouldn't be used as a reason against it. The other arguments for being individual and not efficient.
It's actually the same thing with live production or concert organizing. Like for organizing a concert for yourself, you have to pay some money to Sieć.
But it's going to change, I think, because we have a collective management directive which is implemented in Poland at the end of the year, beginning of next year. And one of the main goals of the people is to enable authors, artists, and record labels to select the rights that they give to collective side. So in our case, it has never been any problems, and this is not a problem today, but in case of authors and artists, they limit these possibilities, and they will be forced now to accept it.
Okay, we have to finish, but I'd like to ask one last question from me, and then you can ask some more questions if you like. I would like to ask you to give yourself and thus our audience some advice from each of you to one of you. I mean, what would you do if you were Paweł? What would you do if you were Wojciech, etc.? Because I have this problem with big organizations and very small ones. I'm kind of in the middle. And I have the problem that big organizations tend not to see the point of view of small guys who do this for fun, and the other way around. They want, there's no cooperation between the two, and I think there's plenty of room in between. So, what would be the advice that would you give? Advice or a comment that would you give to one another?
But maybe you're pretty, Come on. So thing. This is the same advice as always I've been given. Start helping people, and I don't even mean music, but just be nice to each other. And just mainly it is about being a nice guy.
And this is where it starts, when you're starting helping other people with, so this guy asked me, hey, I've got a new record, where should I release it? And I'm giving him a number to another guy who's got this cool label, and it's happening somehow, and then you're making some concerts, etc., etc. But just get yourself interested in music, and bring more people to the music society, and show some cool concerts you should go to, because music changes life, and that's true. And this is it. Maybe it sounds crazy, but I think
Yeah, you already said you're a utopian.
yeah, utopist, yeah. So, but I wasn't even considering that, because I know that the distance between us, the distance between us, but what we do in music and what we do for, let's say, music business, if I'm part of it at all. And I wasn't even, looking, above the clouds, so because it's so blurry from my perspective right now, and I don't see those problems that my colleagues are talking about right now. I see totally different problems, and I try to address them on a daily basis. And this is it. So I guess we'll go for a coffee, or I will panel, and I will.
There is this special room downstairs in Kawiarnia Literacka that you can go, or that you actually should go, and sit for 15 minutes and have a conversation, not only with yourselves, but with the guys. It's a short, it's a small room, right after you enter Kawiarnia Literacka, it's on the right side. Please do go there after the panel, but I interrupted you.
No, this is just it. Yeah, just cool guys. Cool, so
because it hit me that Wojciech actually said the same thing that Paweł did, that it's all for fun, and it's all. I mean, it's not all for fun because it's a business thing for you as well. But then again, playing music is something bigger for you, is it?
The first thing that comes to my mind is, it's very easy to give advices, but the most difficult is to live by music, with music, and into music, day by day. This is the task, and what I would like to say is I strongly encourage musicians to cooperate. The more you cooperate, the more you exchange, the more groups you create, the bigger power you gain. This is obvious, especially in nowadays situations. And I experienced that many times. I was creating from scratch festivals, special concerts, things that were happening in seconds, but if not those people around me and with me, they wouldn't have ever happened. So cooperation is a core of it all. When you have a look at the biggest recording session or those most influential, you may see the answer in the structure of it all. For example, Miles Davis recording in 70s, recording Beaches Brew, famous legendary session. He asked some, let's say, 15 musicians, the best, Jack Jeanette, Keith Jarrett, Chick Corea, and others. They came up, they sat down at the instruments in the studio, and they were waiting for hours. And 1 hour passed, 1 second hour passed, and then they heard the voice from the control room. You motherfuckers, are you musicians or not? You are sitting in this bloody room and you for 1.5 hours and you don't fucking play. Start playing. And this is what it is. This is acting. Music is about action. it's not about, you know, sitting in a room, which, you know, some people tend to do so. Computer, internet, your earphones, or monitors, and fiddle with sounds. It's not about, you know, as it should be. This should be kind of cooperation, contact. You know, this is the core of it all. Especially in the matter of, you know, organizing streaming music, creating some events. So, you know, single wolf, they don't exist.
I would say shortly. First of all, to all musicians those who perform, just do what you like and allow us to do our job. So if you are a musician, do what you like. Just do it. Do your stuff like Paweł does. Okay. However, okay. I was just joking. Anyway, do what you like and allow those who want to do the job that you don't like just to do that. And it's one thing. And second thing is don't be afraid of coming to us. We are at your service as we are service on the record labels. And if you have any good plan or bad plan, any plan, just come to us and talk. I never refuse to meet anybody in the industry, have a talk, and sometimes it finishes doing something, sometimes I say, sorry, it's not good idea, but I never refuse to talk, so don't be afraid, just come.
If you take up his invitation, and you personally are not that connected or engaged by the stuff that he does or that Right does, you can't leave them to do it. You can't, the union, the organisation, the trade association to do it. You have to find someone within your second culture who's interested in some of these things. You have to send them along because the establishment, the old ways, the understanding, you're at the coalface, at the grassroots, you know what's going on. And sometimes the more established institutions miss that. And you can tell them, but it doesn't work. You've got to go and tell them again and again and again and engage with them. So you need to find people within your community, or three of you, to get involved in that debate. Even if it's not you individually, you need to nominate people that you trust the other levels to be taken care of. Any advice?
Like, share the information and love each other, listen to music, go to concerts, really. Maybe even we don't mind, but listening to live music, like supporting live musicians and live music is very important for me. I would love to have audience who is listening, not too big, so like 100, 150 is enough. So don't tell friends, just come by yourself. Oh, I'm just joking. Okay, yeah. So nice to hear all you guys and listen to you and be here with you, and it was very touching.
Well, of course, I asked this question if you had any advice because I also have advice for you. And it was a hidden agenda. No, but what you said, Jake, it's very much what I observed, that when you're a big organization, smaller entities don't want to approach you because they are afraid. And it actually happens on our level. We have a foundation, you know, our founding budget was like 1,800 zlotys, so it's like 400 euros or something. This is, we just put it on the table and that was it. It's not a big organization. We We are a very, very small organization of people doing it for fun. And already we had lots of bands that approached us and said, oh, you are a big organization, give me money. Or, oh, I don't want to approach you because you're too big. And, oh, this fucking Krakow music scene, they're fucking commercial, we're not going to approach them. Or stuff like that, which I can't understand. But on the other hand, I can, because from their perspective, it's like you said, Piotr, that you couldn't see through the clouds. Actually, I couldn't either. I just met this guy, George, last year, and he was talking to me about some European Commission and big politics, and I was, wow, that's when it ends up eventually. So it's, from my perspective, it's very important to form small organizations, grouping like two people, 3 people, maybe 5 people, which will approach the bigger organization forming 15 people, which will then approach perhaps the bigger ones formed out of 30 people, and then those will approach ZPAV or Musicians Labor or Zykes, and they will approach ministry, and the ministry formed in a group of in the European committee or whatever will approach the bigger, even bigger stuff. And I wonder if someone will approach the whole universe at some point. But this is the idea. If you're a single musician group, find a group of musicians that you can play music with. If you're a band, find another band that you can play a concert with. If you're 2 bands, you can actually form a label like Paweł did with Macio, and etc. etc. It's very very important from my point of view for understanding each other. This is because I'm an idealist as well, and I believe what Paweł said and Piotr said, and I'm sure you do as well. We need to be cool guys, and we need to understand each other, because this will bring the peace to the world. Thank you. I'm live on the internet. Hello. Any questions? I'm not sure about people.
Small comment and small question. Because this panel, it's really interesting how does it correspond to the panel before. Because like the panel before, I felt all the time like something is missing. Because we were talking about music as music is a market, also music being produced as for export, as being producing some hits to spread everywhere, and there was something like, for me, always something missing. And here I see like we are talking about the ideas about having fun actually and just doing something for yourself, and also for people who will just enjoy it and understand that this is something like deeply from the heart. But I had this question because, like, also really a sad fact, I don't know if you know about it, that there was this really amazing guy, Michał Wojciech, who closed his label, BDTA, and like, this is the same story as with you, Piotr, that you withdrew from that, market industry because, like, you lost somehow your motivation. So the question is also to Paweł and to you, how to keep being motivated when you are doing something for fun, just because you need it, and somehow you don't have anything what gives you an answer from people for whom you are doing this.
I think Biedota, maybe Mazur is a kind of answer, because he started to work musically more. They even recorded in Lado their session recently.
Of course.
Yes, and we are friends, and I think it was hard for him to like put in all his money into his cassettes and waiting for someone to buy it. But it was fun, and I always see these guys. Like Lado was one of them, and the second guy is Bochan Records, Konikiewicz from Bochan Records. They released the Bochan is releasing vinyls for years now, and he released a lot of international artists. And they were always like their posts on Facebook was kind of fuck, it's like so bad, we don't have money, no one will be fighting as well. And I always ask myself, why they're doing this? I couldn't understand. They were always kind of
Complaining all the time.
Yeah, they were complaining about the situation. So maybe that's why he shut the business, you know. I don't know why.
Business.
Business.
It's funny how
basically, maybe this is answer, but I don't know exactly. He has his work, you know, he's a happy musician now, so I think.
But how do you find your motivation? This was the question.
My motivation?
Yeah. What's your motivation?
It's like purely musical motivation, you know. I don't want to look for a publisher. No, that's all my motivation. Recently I gathered a band called Bastarda. We play medieval music from Petersburg, from Grudziądz. We were so into the music. I was so into the music. I thought, oh my God, this is so beautiful. Two voices mountains, beautiful songs, beautiful songs. And we released a CD for double clarinet, contrabass, clarinet, and cello. And I said, and I thought about it. Like, I had a small thought. Maybe we should like go further with it, like find someone. And Tomasz Pokrzywiński, the cellist, he's a really good classical cellist. He's playing with Moshe and Poland Baroque and all these bands. And he said, like, maybe not in Lado, you know, maybe in some bigger, you know, situation, like we could sell it. And then I said, and I think, man, and I talked with Maciej about loyalty, you know. And he said, this is great, but you are releasing the CDs, like Masecki, also, he's still releasing, he could release on Universal, he had the proposals from Universal Music, like big company, and very good contract, and he decided to release the Młynarski Masecki band, jazz band, it's like in days now, in Lado, because they're loyal, you know, they're our friends, and they want to support the label with good music, no, with good production, with good band. And I said same thing. I thought, man, like looking for a publisher or doing some outside thing, I could do it on my own, in my own way, with nothing, no outside. Like, basically, the logos, like behind the sleeve, when you, most of the CDs, when you turn the sleeve,
back cover?
The cover, back cover, yeah? You have the logos there, a lot of it, and it's ugly. So maybe this is the reason.
My motivation, you know, I just realized, maybe because my parents are teachers, and I've got this mission, and I'm music business, like I said before, and I just realized that when I'm calling all those guys from different cities I haven't met before, but I knew that they were doing some cool shit about music, and then I started calling them, and it sounded like we know each other for a long time, but we haven't met before, and then we started calling each other, are we? Yes. But are we? Yes. But yeah, yes. So this was this kind of energy that let me do this thing for quite a long time, and even though I didn't want to be the leader of the whole collective, somehow I had to, because I started it, and it was my creation somehow. And the answer why the motivation stopped is pretty simple, and I told Michał that I will answer him later, but
I will tell you later.
No, I can just tell it, because it's the question not from you but from the audience, and we're here for the audience, I guess. I just got my depression, and I just started hating the world at all. So right now I'm taking my magic pills, I feel better, and I can go back to music again.
Oh, the same with me. How funny.
Yeah. So
Who
yeah.
else got a depression?
And the whole
Seriously, like 3 people? Wow, we're doing really great.
So you just started with music. Okay, yeah. And you know, I guess that you should ask this question about motivation at 6 p.m. when Tomek will be the panelist, because he's doing so fucking cool shit with his guys, and yeah, it's gonna stay with us totally. So ask this question again at 6 p.m. At the panel Muzyków will be day. and then you have some cool answers. So yeah, this is the internal motivation totally, and you have to see the change. You see that you can change something, and I guess we all see that we can change something. We don't like that it's so hard, and we have to struggle, and we have to gather together on many levels, as it was said today. And yeah, this is it. Let's change something into some cool shit.
Guys, we have to finish. I hope you will ask some more questions to those people, those guys here downstairs in Kawiarnia Literacka. We're going to be there for 15 minutes or something. I mean, we can stay there forever if you like. And one more thing. We were supposed to have a speed meeting sessions here, like to get to know each other better. But I'd like to move it to tomorrow's spotkanie scen muzycznych. I don't know if you spotted this thing on the schedule. We will sit in a yeah, it's tomorrow at 3, I think, and we can sit together in a circle and exchange ideas and try to find any common what do you call it, common denominator for each of us, wspólny mianownik, and try to form some groups of support. It sounds funny, but it is, as you can see on the example of actually all of those guys here, it is kind of crucial. If you feel it's crucial, come to tomorrow's spotkanie scen muzycznych, and if you want to meet people, instead of doing a speed dating thing, just go have a drink and meet people. Thank you very much, and see you at the other panel, at the next panel. Thank you very much. It was thank you.